Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this Oasys Giraphe webinar. My name is Norbert Kovac, and I'm one of the business development managers at Oasys. So some of you might know me. You might have even met me in person, and our other presenters as well. But for the benefit of anyone who's new to Oasys, Oasys stands for Over Arab Systems. We are Arab's in-house software developer. We provide digital solutions for structural and geotechnical engineering, as well as for as well as pedestrian simulation software. Being part of Arab as an independent company means we can focus solely on developing leading engineering solutions. Now, just a few general notes before we kick off. We are going to have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please do put these into the Q&A box. So you should see the Q&A box towards the top middle-ish part of your screen. Just in case if you don't have that, technical difficulties can always happen. No worries, put the questions into the chat box and one of my colleagues is going to copy them over. The webinar is going to be recorded. So if you want to rewatch it a bit later or share it with anyone, you can go on our website and you can find this, as well as you can see our other webinars, structural, geotechnical, and pedestrian simulation ones. And then finally, give us a follow on LinkedIn. We have lots of news coming out on there, all sorts of info about the webinars, software development, and also it's one of the ways you can get in touch with us and let us know your feedback or any requests you have. And then finally, moving on to our presenters. So as you can see, myself still had hair there. We also have Raul Perulero Serrano, our geotechnical product manager, and Mark Skinner, our geotechnical portfolio product manager. And with that, I will hand you over to Mark.
Fantastic. Thank you, Norbert. Hello, everyone. Mark Skinner here. As Norbert said, I'm the geotechnical portfolio product manager for the Oasys geotechnical software products. I'm just going to start, if the slides move on, there we go, by giving you a quick run through what we're going to cover today in the webinar. So we're going to start off, I'm going to give an introduction to Giraphe. So answering the question, what is Giraphe? Will be a bit of a recap if you've been to one of our previous webinars. But if not, hopefully that's new and interesting for you. We'll then move on to cover, firstly, well, what's new in Giraphe, and sort of explain how that helps you with geotechnical graphing. It's been about 6 months since our last webinar, so hopefully, we've got a good number of things to show you since we presented. I think it's back in November. And Raul is going to cover some of those new things as well. So I'll hand over to Raul as part of that slot. We're then going to show you just a brief sneak peek of some of the things that the Giraphe development team are currently working on that are going to come through into Giraphe over the coming months. And then we'll finish up with a quick summary and questions and answers. That's the plan. Okay, so what is Giraphe? First section. So it is, we'd like to describe it as the dynamic graphing integration for Open Ground. So Oasys, we're very, very proud to have a partnership with Sequent, the makers of Open Ground, and come on to that shortly. But yeah, we've built Giraphe to work expressly with Open Ground to do geotechnical graphing. So there's really 3 definitions on this page that are sort of saying similar things, but I hope they get across the point of Giraphe. So dynamic graphs, it's all about being interactive, the second point there, for allowing you to quickly create those graphs and explore the data on them. And we hope it's really easy to use, really intuitive. It's all in a website, cloud-based, and that brings a number of benefits. Nothing to install, anything like that. It's all there. It's all connected, talking straight to Open Ground. But I'll come on to some of those benefits in the next slide. Okay, so why Giraphe? What does it do for you? So I said briefly on the previous slide, but yes, it's made for Open Ground with Sequent, and that's all about, firstly, the connectivity. So Giraphe talks directly to OpenGround on your behalf, using, well, acknowledging your credentials. So it will see the projects that you as an OpenGround user can see in OpenGround, have the equivalent access. And it gets that data all seamlessly, and it knows how to build quite a number of graphs straight up. So the next benefit, we have a library of geotechnical graphs in Giraphe. It's a growing library, keeps expanding. Raoul will cover a few of those things shortly. And we hope that gives you, well, exactly that, really a good collection of common graphs. We try to focus on the graphs that are typically made most often from project to project, and then expand out from there. But you also have the ability to build whatever you want from scratch. So you can query anything in your OpenGround project, noting that different OpenGround projects can be structured differently. So Giraphe detects that structure and lets you navigate the groups and fields that you have in your own project. And then you can pull that information in and plot it up as you wish. That's the idea. So two key ways there of plotting graphs. I talked about interactivity, dynamic side of things. So really, yeah, this is about, once you've got the data surfaced on a graph, it's about getting into that data, getting insight from it. So you can hover over things, you can highlight things, we'll show you shortly, you can filter things out and then start to draw trends. And really that's all about understanding your project data better, because you can interact with it and discover what you need to know. And really, again, that's about moving away from paper. We hope that's the sort of the end result there. Okay. So I kind of covered this already, but in inspect and learn, it's all about the filtering and getting insight from that data, drawing trend lines. So as you learn about your data, you can record that on the graph and take it forward into any reports you need to use. And of course, filtering covers things like excluding results that you want to not consider as part of that assessment. Okay. Once you've created the graphs, you can choose to export them. So this is for onward use in reports, for example, or presentations. So we hope that Giraphe does that really smoothly. You basically get a list of all of your graphs. You choose which ones you want to export, and they come down as a zip file into your downloads folder, and then they can be dropped into a report. So it's a nice seamless process. And those exports are very consistent across your organization, because they all look the same, same sort of style, same sort of formatting. We hope that's a good benefit. Okay, so that was a sort of a brief explanation of Giraphe and why we think it's a good graphing tool. We're now going to move on to the main show today, I suppose, which is all about what's new in Giraphe. There we go. So next section, and I'm actually going to hand over to Raoul to talk to you about some improvements in Giraphe, some new features all around creating graphs.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Norbert, and thanks everyone who helped organizing the webinar today, and everyone on the other side for joining us today as well. So just there we go. So I'm going to show you now around the interface. So once you're in Giraphe, we've got a structure with the different collections, and we can see how things get organized. And at this moment tends to, like Mark was saying, we ping the data, we retrieve the data from the OpenGround projects, and then you can do your analysis in here. And those the collections tend to represent the gatherings of that data for those projects. So in particular, once you're inside the collection and you create your graphs, this is one of the core, is part of the core being of Giraphe, is the graph library. So in the graph library, over time, like with the product, it's been changing, and more recently, we are also been displaying how the icons that you can visually identify quickly allow you to that smoothness of the process and identifying what you need. For example, if you're familiar with the PSD curves graphs, having the different variables set as portrait or landscape, depending on the different templates. Plasticity charts, liquid versus liquid limit. We've also got different types of access. So when you're doing, for example, monitoring, we also cover that. For CPTs, we've got an ever-growing collection with different types of graphs from the different variables, which if you're familiar with the table, with the field in OpenGround, with the group, you've got tons of data you can bring from there. And what we provide you is some of the typical ones. Like Mark was saying, you can go in, you can alter those queries, and you can bring any data that you've got in your project. And again, coefficients of consolidation from those lab testing, logarithmic access, variables versus time. We try to cover as much as we can, and we keep growing that library. I think only within Arab itself, we had originally like around 260 templates with the previous workflows. So we're just building up on that knowledge, making it better, not just replacing. And with that, on the work on the thumbnails, some of them are dynamic, so they adjust to what the variables are and the orientation of the graph, so you know what you're expecting. Another thing that it's changed over time and it's become really useful is you can click on these the information icons, and what this does is opens up the list of variables within. I'm just showing also some of them are in draft because I'm helping helping in the team on creating those graphs. Just open different one. Let's go with the PSD curves. So here it shows you exactly what are the groups, what are the tables that in OpenGround have the data, and which are the columns or the fields that bring that data. And the queries are organized in a way that go. It's a joint way to create a successful query. So you start with your X and your Y variable, and then you build up with the location, the geology codes, and you add in here everything that you want or you think you might need for filtering your data. And if you haven't, no worries, you can create, you can change that query and you can amend it and refine it to a point. And that also comes quite powerful because once you might start working from a template, but you also have the ability to create your custom templates. I'm sure Mark might touch on that later on. So yeah, once you're familiar with these and you see what you're expecting, you can just go and create it. Another, the info panel is also telling you about if there's some of the fields that do not exist or that in the particular schema. So the default schema from Bentley, for example, within Arab, this has been changed, and there are additional fields that our engineers have created, and they are standardized, for example, across regions, across teams, across projects. And those fields might not be they can be recognized by Giraphe, and then you can work on, but then you need to refresh the schema. You need to make sure that both sides are in sync, and then you can just carry on creating. But the templates, because they are set up beforehand, this mechanism tells you if any of those fields are not available for querying. So other things that can be seen in here is that you can create things by depth or by elevation. And then you can also like multi-select, and you can just create different sets of groups, different quantities, and in packs, for example, and then you can review those and move on. The other thing is that you can search if you want to refine, for example, if you don't if you're not looking anymore for those templates, and then you just want to search for a particular one, and you're thinking, for example, UCS. So then again, we are just making it easier for you to find those templates within the graph library. You can also change the project. meaning that even if you've created your collection of graphs for a particular data project in a particular regional instance, you can also create a graph within the collection. For example, if you have historical data and you're bringing the data from a different project in OpenGround, you can do this through here. And one last thing is on this view is we've got if you feel like once you are more acquainted with the interface, and then you know which ones are the ones you go for, and you can which templates are using most. Then you can, for example, change to the list view, and you get exactly the same. You just get the different categories, the descriptions. You can sort them by name, and then you can multi-select from here as well, and then start creating straight away. So in terms of other templates that we've been lately introducing, again, in liaison with the engineers, in liaison with yourselves, when you get in touch with us, some of the requests. So we've been adding also like some reduced queries for the particle distribution tests, for the particle distribution curves, because we've been finding that more and more projects are starting, especially in linear infrastructure projects, large ones, thousands and thousands of locations. And if you add, depending on the amount of data you get, it starts being cluttered in the interface, and that's why we've got the filters. So you get that understanding through the data, and the same with CPTs, for example, which is data intensive. When you're recording data every centimeter, it's complicated when you get all that cloud of points, and we are trying to make things easier in the interface so you can interpret that data easier and faster. And then I'm going to jump now onto a different screen, and here I've got one of the CPT graphs for this test project. As you can see, we've got the variables. It's laid out in portrait mode. If I am hovering on top of the different records, you can see where you are, and that is the raw data. So again, you've got data every centimeter, and you can see it in here with the different spikes about the tip resistance against depth. But what we've done also is, again, when you've got projects that have tens, hundreds of thousands of data, to be able to see smoothly through the interface, to be able to query that data more easily. What we've done is we've created other types of templates in which the data is averaged over a certain length. For example, every 5 centimeters, every 10 centimeters, so something that you would do also, for example, if you're doing it with a spreadsheet or something. But we are trying to do those steps for you just to easily look into that. So for example, that same graph with a window, a smoothing window of about 5 centimeters, you can just appreciate that those spikes there are slightly smooth, and then when averaging every 10 centimeters, again, without losing into the interpretation, by just smoothing out some of those, and it's much more responsive. So that's other things we've been working on. And then the thing is about the data in OpenGround is you bring in the data and then you look at the filtering. So then it's about how you filter through the different locations, through the different geologies. And one of the things that you can do that is visually, and we can go that in a second, but we also have improved the experience around how the tables behave, because you've seen on the previous is part of the components in the interface. This is just one of the tables, but when you're looking at this is a different type of component where you can do sorting, where you can do filtering, and then in here, for example, you can see you can look at the display, and then there might be some of these variables that have been pulled from OpenGround that you might not be interested to see. For example, not about the location type or the final depth. You can remove those, and it just syncs with what you're seeing on screen. I might want to take this out as well, and the depth specimen top, for example, or the final depth. So then again, you just go through your table, you can inspect your data, you're in control of all of this. Then if you want to, for example, sort by location, again, you just click on it, and then you start with the borehole one, and then we've got those 2,300 records in there. It's telling me about the geology, and then you can start also filtering. So you, for example, you might say, well, now instead of by the particle size distribution, sorry, particle size, I want to, for example, filter by geology code. And we have embedded in here some intelligence around these Boolean queries in which you have if it contains, if it doesn't contain, if it's equal, starts with. So for example, in terms of containing, I'm sorry, it's equal because I've got two very similar materials in particular here, the Mercy Mudstone group and also the made ground. So I want to make sure that I'm only looking, for example, at the Mercy Mudstone group values. And again, I've just filtered that down. It goes down to 468 records. And I can further refine that, for example, if I only want to see, for example, the results for borehole 101. So that's brought it down now to 54 records. And it's telling me that I've got three different depths for three different tests at three different depths with different samples for this particular one. Also within the dataset view, it's possible to edit a copy of this dataset, and as I was mentioning earlier, by editing the copy, you can reduce the query. If there's any of these variables that the template is bringing that you don't need, you just take them out. If you need to add other variables that you have in your data schema, you can do the same. And also, quite importantly, we allow in here to look into refresh live data. And what does that exactly mean? It's like when we pull the data from Open Ground is a snapshot. So whatever exists in Open Ground, you just see what's happening in there. Now, as we know, the projects carry on over time and they change, and you receive new data from the contractors from site. And you might decide that you might have a design freeze situation in which you've done certain design for a particular period or particular phase of your project, and then you've created your graphs for that. Now, if you were to refresh this, it would add extra data. So you have the ability of saving those graphs, they are there, and then create new data sets, and then you can refresh you can refresh the data, and then it just brings the new data into that, and then you can carry on with your interpretation. So yeah, just another thing to mention around this is that the other data sets that we've been adding for around CPTs, it's been on the derived parameters, and the derived parameters is just another group. It's so vast. There's so many variables that you can bring, and then it's like how we can make life easier on bringing those graphs and allowing you to interpret the data easier. And I think that covers what we want to show for now. So back to you, Mark, I think.
Fantastic. Thanks, Raul. That's great. I'll just re-grab the screen share. Hope that's the screen. And we'll go straight into the next section. So yeah, Raul has covered creating graphs and data sets, which are the things that graphs read data from. I'm going to spend a bit of time with you now looking at some new features in Giraphe that help you work with graphs. It's the sort of main theme of this section. I'm going to come back out of that and put Giraphe on the screen. Here we go. Okay, so first thing we've added, I say added, I might say improved, is all around filtering. So when we first put filters into Giraphe, it was quite limited. You could only filter a couple of key fields. We have now greatly improved that. So this is just an example graph on the screen. It's dummy data showing some theoretical SPTN values versus depth for a site. Over on the right hand side of the screen in the filters tab, we now have the ability to add filters based on any other field in the data set. So here's one I made earlier, to use that historical quote. It's set to filter geology code to glacial tilt, but the filter is off. So very simply, if I turn that on, it will update the graph immediately, and you'll see it's quite responsive as you start to adjust that. So this goes back to what I was talking about in terms of being dynamic, interrogating your data. It should allow you to really get into the details. So let's turn that one off, but we can add more than one at once. So you start to stack them up to do what you need to do, really. So let's try location type. So this is the type of investigation hole. We've got here capable percussive, rotary core. So if we filter just on capable percussive, you'll see some of the other points were removed. Now, here's the trick. Shall we do both filters at once? So this is only CP data from glacial till. So you very quickly see that they start to stack up and filter down data. But because you can save them and then switch them on and off independently, you get quite a lot of flexibility there to cut the data as you require to understand it, I suppose. Brilliant. So yeah, that's filters. They save with the graph, and I'll show you later creating templates. But just to mention now that the templates are the filters are saved with the template as well, should you require that. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show was trend lines, and again, these have been improved. So there are no trend lines currently on this graph. You have the ability to add them, and you can now switch them on and off. That was not possible previously. Let's add a first trend line. So you've had the ability to draw them manually, so specifying coordinates previously. So you can either specify a start and end point by this control here, or you can specify a gradient and an intercept and a range over which that trend line operates. But what we've now added is the ability to fit divisible points. This uses a least squares method of fitting, and you select the direction that you wish that the least squares calculation to be undertaken in. So there's a control there to set that. So I've hit fit divisible points. It's created the trend line. And the important principle here is that the trend line is created based on the visible data. So now if I jump back into my filters and I filter on, well, let's turn the glacial till filter on. You see I've still got the all data trend line, but I could then jump back into trend lines and add a new trend line, fit divisible points, and you'll see it's only done it based on the glacial till. Just add that to delineate them. So we can add a label. We can drag that label around. We can lock that, and we can also choose whether the label shows the least squares equation or not. So that's a way of producing those design lines based on a least squares fit. You could, of course, then go into the controls, select gradient and intercept, and essentially take control of that trend line and adjust that gradient and intercept to fit your desired design line if you wanted to, or do that using the start and end point, just move it around. Last thing I'll show you then on the trend lines is we've added some control over the line properties. So you can choose colors, a hex value, and line thickness. So that should set them apart a bit. So hopefully that is useful. Okay, I think that's all I have on trend lines. I'm going to jump to the next tab I have open to show you the next thing. This is just some dummy data. It's showing in situ shear vein results by depth for 2 locations, and what I'm going to show you here is a bit of functionality we call it group by, but essentially what that's doing is sorting by a third parameter and then optionally showing a line between. So I'm going to select. You'll see that they've got symbols showing which point belongs to which location ID, and that's controlled here by the symbol selector, and that's what's causing the legend to show that. What we can do is group by location ID, and you'll see that Giraphe now joins by location ID. So you effectively joining those points together. You can control the direction of sort. So if I flip it to X, which won't make much sense in this case, because generally you would want those joined by depth order, but what it's now doing is joining them by result value. So that's helpful, but it just shows that it is possible to do it either way. This is a very simple example because this data set only has a result allocation ID, a few other parameters, geology, for example, in it. It does get, there is a special case for group by, which is the particle size distribution graph. I'll just open one of those now, my third tab, which we've added because it is very common, especially on the PSD graph, to want to see the depth and the sample ID in the legend to be able to differentiate those lines on the PSD chart. So that ability is now in Giraphe, and you can see the legend is reflecting there that it's telling you which line comes from which sample within each borehole. In fact, if you don't have that, it's very difficult to tell the lines apart. You can't tell which one came from which sample, which is obviously not much use to you. Okay, so that was group by, just to quickly cover that. I should mention you can stack up variables here, so you could group by location and geology, and it will start to cut up that line according to the various properties there. But it gets quite complicated. Okay, right. So the next thing I'm keen to show you around working with graphs is something that people using Giraphe have been asking for some time. So very, very pleased to have out, as it were, and that is colouring by geology. So Giraphe for some while has been able to assign a colour to a geology within a collection, but that colour was sort of arbitrarily assigned from a selected palette. You've got a number of palettes you can choose from. What we've added is the ability for you to create your own palettes for geologies, for any geology field that we've picked up, and then to assign colours. So within this collection of graphs, we've encountered, what's that, six distinct geology values, and there's an additional one for no value if there's no geology specified at some point. And so we can now override the colors if we want to. So there's a selector here that lets you choose specific RGB or hex values. We know for some people that's important. You might have other outputs on the project where you're using very distinctive colors for specific geologies. So you can now replicate that in Giraphe. You do have some quick pickers down here for a greater number of colors if you wish, and they can be set by you. So yeah, that's the geology color selection. Now you can create lots of palettes. So you could have two palettes within the same collection of graphs and use them in different places. I don't know if you had a collection covering two different parts of a site, for example. That's all possible. So yeah, we have that's a good improvement. I'll just show you quickly the way that's selected, applied to a graph, I should say. So let's jump back to the SPT graph here. You go into the color selector. So under display options, there's a color selector and a symbol selector that governs how colors are assigned and how symbols are assigned. And what you'll see is that the custom palette appears in this this drop down once it's been set. Okay. So yeah, that's I hope that's good. It provides consistent colors for geologies specified by you across all your graphs in the collection. So that's a good thing that people have been asking for. And I will say at this point, it's about to get better as well. So just jump back into the collection settings. There'll be another button here soon that lets you apply that palette retrospectively to graphs in your collection. So at the moment you have to go to each graph and assign that palette. Very soon there'll be that functionality to just apply to all, essentially, which obviously make things a lot easier for you. Okay, just very briefly jump back into presentation. So that was a little bit of functionality around working with graphs. I'm going to follow that up with a final set of new things in Giraphe that are all around really how you move from project to project. So how Giraphe works for you across subsequent projects, and how it should save you time and effort, we hope, in that regard. So not end slideshow, jump back into Giraphe, and the first thing I'm keen to show is sharing. So we have improved sharing. So in collection settings, so you're inside a collection. In fact, I'm going to jump back to the collection list. These are all my collections here. You can see that one there has a little eye icon. So Raoul has shared that one with me. He actually shared it just before the webinar, about an hour ago. I can open that collection and I can see the graphs, but they're all read-only because he shared it with me read-only. So I can see them, but I can't edit them. But what I can do is clone the entire collection if I want to, and then that would be my collection. I can start to do things with it. So if I reopen the example collection I was showing you, go into collection settings, under sharing. This is how we do it. So for read-only, you can share with multiple people just by entering their email addresses. But you can choose to give edit access, and that's only for one person. So it's effectively what you're doing is giving that collection to somebody else, and it becomes theirs once they accept it. You optionally can send an email as well if you wish to do that. It also tells you here how many people that collection is shared with, and gives you the opportunity to revoke that access. That's if it's read-only. So bear that in mind as we see some of the next bits of functionality. So we've got sharing, either read-only or editing. Let's go back into a graph. I touched on this briefly earlier. So if you've got a graph, you've created it, you might have created it from one of our templates from the graph library. You might have built it yourself. In either way, you will have done things to it. So you might have changed colors, you might have changed axis labels, set it up how you need it to appear. We've added this little button here, which creates a template from the current graph. So it will save that, and it will appear in the graph library. Let's just press it now. You have to give it a name. My template. Let's not have a description. Save that template. So if I go back to the collection, to new graphs, you will see I now have a custom template here, which would then recreate that graph, including the definition of the query to open ground if it's an open ground graph. So this only appears in my graph library. It's like a personal template. However, I can share that graph with other people. So using the sharing functionality, we could then deploy it. Other people can make use of that template if needed. So that's custom template. And the next thing I'm keen to show is the idea of switching a project. So as an example, I've got here some pest graphs. What have we got? PSD. Oh no, hang on. Just go back up once to the collection. Got a few collections here that could be a sort of a starter collection. So they're populated with a number of graphs that I might like. So for example, just theoretically, I've got a suite of graphs that I might start with on a granular soil, so a site that's largely granular soil based. So what you could then do is you could clone this collection, and then you could change the project that the graphs are looking at, and Giraphe will do exactly that. It will run through all the graphs. It does it sort of semi-simultaneously, and it will change the open ground project that they are looking at. So I won't do that one, just in the interest of time. But here is a collection that just has a few CPT graphs in it. If I clone that, so you get a new copy up here. Let's open it up, and let's just recreate one of those. Open that, change project, and I'm just going to select a project at random without checking that it's actually got data in it. So we'll see if it's successful. If you get a tick, it means it's created okay. So it's currently retrieving the relevant data from OpenGround for the new project, and when that's ready, it just takes a few moments working behind the scenes. You get a green tick, and then you open it up, and you see some data. So that is that's what we hope, is that it allows you to sort of pre-prepare a bunch of graphs and then deploy them very quickly. So either you as your own Giraphe user can copy that collection and reuse it, or you can share it with somebody else. And I hope that allows a sort of level of customization that gets you going on the next project quite quickly. Bearing in mind what Raoul showed you earlier as well about refreshing those graphs. You can resample the data at any point multiple times during the project lifecycle. Should all work nicely. Okay, I think I've reached the end of the list of new things to show. I will just, as I'm here, as I'm sharing, I'll just remind you about the Learn tab in Giraphe. So what we have here is a number of videos on YouTube that show you how to do very specific things. These are links you can hit watch and it'll open up. And of course, we have full documentation as well, showing you how to do all of these things. It's just it's another web page. Sign in and click into that. That is accessed through the little question mark in the top right, help, which is also the place where you can submit a support request as well if you need some help from us. Okay, I'm going to just pop the slides back on the screen now. I'm going to finish up with a recap, and as I promised, a quick hint over around what's coming soon. So just to recap what we've shown today so far. What is Giraphe? It's the dynamic graphing integration for OpenGround. Helps you get data from OpenGround, plot it up on pre-made graphs or on your own custom-made graphs with a nice seamless connection. And we hope it's really dynamic, helps you get into that data and understand the data on your site. So the next three tiles here are recapping the three areas that we showed new functionality. So around creating the graphs you need. So we've got the graph library, which has been improved in a number of ways. We've got visually, we've got the new icons that help you quickly find those templates. We've got the info panel that tells you all the details about what is queried from OpenGround when you create that graph. So the data that you get, the fields that you get in that data set. And it also tells you if the fields required for that template are not present in your project, so you know beforehand. We've got a list view in the graph library that it's just an alternate way of seeing those graphs, but Raoul showed some of the sort of filtering and searching functionality that you can do if needed. And we've got a number of new CPT templates in the graph library. We do keep adding new templates, but last month or so we've added a number of CPT ones, and they are classed as derived parameters. They're coming straight from OpenGround. We're not doing anything to calculate them, but there's calculated parameters from OpenGround in there. And then lastly, on creating graphs, the data set view Raoul also showed you, which shows you a table of your data set, and we've made that a lot more intelligent. So showing and hiding different columns, different fields, and searching, sorting, filtering, all of that sort of functionality. So it should allow you to really understand your table in a tabular format, your data in a tabular format, sorry. If you use that alongside the graphing, it allows you to really sort of be clear about what's going on. Okay, I then started to show you some new things that help you work with the graphs. So filtering, you can apply multiple filters now and filter on anything in the data set that's being plotted. Trend lines, same sort of thing. You can create multiple trend lines. You've got a statistical fit, and you can switch both the filters and the trend lines on and off as required. And we've got the manual geology colors sorted now. So you can define the colors per geology within a collection. The collection, in any graph within that collection which encounters a geology code, it will collate that into a single list of geology codes. And then you can pick the colors you need. And then lastly, thinking about the next project. So we've got some functionality around sharing. You can share collections, read only or edit only, or edit rights. You can create custom templates, and you can change the project that a given graph is looking at. And combining that, it means that you can effectively have a sort of a set of graphs set up, ready to go, and then share them with colleagues or just reuse them yourself on the next project. And we hope that really gives you a sort of a head start in getting going on that next project. All right, so as a recap, in terms of what to look out for soon. So 4 things on this this slide. These are things that are actively being worked on by the Giraphe team. Multiple series on the left is the most it's the most advanced, as in it's most likely to be out soon. It is what it says on the tin. It's allowing you to plot more than one series on the graph at once. So more than one set of data, if you like, which we hope will be will greatly step up the power of Giraphe. In a similar way, the middle 2 items there, so pre-filtering and permutations. Raoul mentioned that what we were finding is that people were using Giraphe with bigger and bigger projects in open ground, thousands of locations. So what we're trying to do, we're adding pre-filtering to let you filter that data before it comes into Giraphe rather than after it's come into Giraphe. And that means, well, you just have, everything works better if you filter the data down. You don't need to get quite so much data that you're not going to use. You can pre-filter it, get just what you need, and then it's easier to deal with it for both you and Giraphe. It will run more quickly and it's more intelligible. So that's happening. And then permutations, that will allow you to create versions of the same graph iterating through a few key variables. So geology codes is an obvious example. So you might create the same version of a graph, say it was that SPT graph, but split it out by geology, but as separate graphs. So there'll be a tool to do that coming soon. And then lastly, exports. We are going to smarten up the layout, add a bit more information on there. We've had requests to add more things on there. For example, created by, checked by, that sort of stuff. And hopefully we'll create an easier route to creating PDFs, where the exports are formatted as SVGs for sound reasons, that they scale very nicely, but we do get a lot of requests for PDFs, so we'll look at that. I'm going to run out of time, but here is a preview of multiple series. So you can see on the right there, the properties panel has got 2 separate series. This is actually the same data I showed you earlier, the shear vein data. But in this case, I've acquired it as 2 separate series. So there's 2 separate data sets behind this, just to show that is working behind the scenes. So that'll be coming soon. And then we've got to do things like make the filters apply to specific series, but that really steps up the power of what you can do. Okay, it's time for me to hand back to Norbert, I think.
Yes, hello. And we do have quite a few questions. So I'm going to quickly mention that we are going to be going to 2 events. So if you'd like to see us in person, it would be brilliant if you could just pop over. We're going to be at Digital Construction Week on the 4th and 5th of June. This will be in Excel, London, and at Geotechnical on the 9th and 10th of July, which will be in the Warwickshire Event Centre. As you can see, all of our development is based on what our users think and what is it the direction in which engineers think the world is going. So please do come along, say hello, and let's have a conversation. And with that said, yes, let's talk about questions. Let me just quickly scroll down to the bottom. There was a question which was very quickly answers. So can graphs alternatively be shown with elevation instead of depth? And yes, the person asking the question found the button in the top right corner, and Raul did reply to that. Unless there's anything more to elaborate on that, I can move on to the next question. So the next question is, can annotations be automatically added to describe filters added to graphs?
I can take that one.
Sure.
Not currently, but definitely on the list of things to do. We'd like to basically have free annotations to let you write that information on the graph. Yeah, it's on the list.
Okay. Is there an option currently available to plot results against depth below top level, i.e. surface, of a particular strata?
That is something that comes up often. It's a slightly more tricky one to answer. If you can get the data in that format in OpenGround, yes, you can plot it, but you can't do that calculation in Giraphe itself. But again, we're aware of the request and would be keen to do that at some point. Can't promise a date though.
But we're looking into it.
Yep.
So is there any scope to allow the custom colors to be sorted by different fields? Currently, it only allows choice per geology code, but personally, I typically use a combined geology code, GEO1 plus GEO2, to differentiate, and so I would be sorting with a different field.
That's great feedback. We will, yeah, we'll take that on board. We would like to liberate the geology color specifications. At the moment in Giraphe, as you have observed, it's limited to specific geology variables, but we would like to liberate it so that you can nominate the variable that the colors are assigned to. So that's a next step. So you'll be able to assign colors essentially on any variable, and hopefully that would achieve what you need. But at the moment, it's a predefined list of geology codes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Brilliant. Nice package. How is the license and how much does it cost? So the licensing is currently on a user-named license basis. So basically, if you, let's call you Joe, would like to buy a license, an account for Giraphe, then you can use it and it's tied to yourself. If you have more colleagues, then they would need to purchase an account as well. When it comes to costs, I would suggest let's have a conversation about what your requirements are, size of team, and so on. So I can give you a better idea about the cost. But just to give you a bit of an initial feedback, we have kept the cost very, very low. So what we're approximating is that only a few hours or a few days worth of work using Giraphe is going to return your investment. Brilliant. So for sharing, is the recipient required to have a Giraphe account to view as read-only?
Yes. You have to be able to log in.
Okay. The next question is Giraphe compatible with Wholebase or Gint for companies that have not changed over to OpenGround yet? Interesting question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It is interesting. No, we've built Giraphe to work with OpenGround, and the main reason for that link is that it's cloud-based. So we're making use of OpenGround's API, so we can talk to OpenGround directly. So that's how we've built Giraphe. But we do allow the importing of data as a CSV. So you could, if you can export the data from Wholebase or Gint as a CSV, it will then read into Giraphe, and it will make sure all the headers are in the first row of the CSV, and then Giraphe will pick them all up, and you can create graphs that way. But the graphs in the graph library are all based on queries to OpenGround, so that's how that works.
Yeah, basically, so there's flexibility, but when it comes to the dynamic relationship between Giraphe and OpenGround, that is only for OpenGround. Is it possible to? Oh, sorry, I jumped one. Can data from multiple projects be shown in a single graph?
Well, that's what multiple series will allow. So the answer is it will be soon. Yep.
Brilliant. Is it possible to edit the data a bit in Giraphe and push back to open ground?
No, it's not. Giraphe is read only. So the idea is that you make changes in open ground, and then in Giraphe you could hit refresh and it will pull the change data down to Giraphe. Yep.
Awesome. And the final one we have currently, but if you have any more questions, do put them in. Is statistical analysis of data possible with Giraphe, or something that can be developed in the future?
So there are no direct statistical methods built in, other than drawing a trend line using a least squares method. But we have ideas around a sort of data summary that allows you to quickly see key measures about your data. So, for example, min, max, average, standard deviations. So it feels like I'm saying this a lot, but yes, we'd like to do that soon. Yeah.
Well, as you said, well, Giraphe is a relatively new software, so we have lots of ambitious plans, and these questions and these feedbacks are really important for us, because this is how we can see what are the needs of the market, what are the needs of the engineers. So by all means, ask more and comment more, so that we know what we're looking to do is what you need. Brilliant. So that seems to have been the last question. Unless anything else pops in, I'm just going to say thank you for our presenters. Brilliant job, very intriguing presentations. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, do keep in touch. You can, again, as I mentioned, you can keep in touch with us through our LinkedIn, or you can send us an email through oasys@arup.com. And yes, we do want to continue this conversation, and if possible, even come and say hello during the events that I mentioned. But for the time being, thank you for joining, and have a nice day.